So I chose to do my organizational change project on, again, the company I work for. I didn't really notice all of these organizational changes or development issues that they had until I enrolled in this class. So before, when they would make changes, I would just kind of go along with them and, management saying to do it, so I'll just follow. But now that I've enrolled in this class, I'm noticing a lot of ways that they can improve, and I'm kind of bringing that into my workplace as well, which is kind of cool for me because I'm able to help management and they're seeing me as more of an asset, so thank you. But actually, for this project, I actually sat down with some of my direct managers and showed them some of the ways where they can improve implementing their change, so that way they can create buy-in from us as the employees. And you'll see throughout this project how they really didn't create buy-in from us, and it was actually causing a lot more issues than helping. Where when you think of organizational change, you think it's supposed to help the company and improve what's already being done. But in reality, it was actually hurting us more than helping. So hopefully with some of these theories and stuff from this class I was able to bring to my direct managers, we'll be hopefully able to kind of lessen the hurt that these changes are creating for us. And actually, I was able to witness them use some of it at one point with a change they just implemented a little bit ago, where they actually sat us down in smaller groups with our direct managers and let us speak freely. And then we actually had a large employee meeting with our general manager and everything, and kind of brought about those issues, and we were able to speak freely there about some of our smaller groups that we had and issues that we brought forward there. And it was a lot more open for us to talk in those smaller groups. There wasn't as much pressure on us to talk as there are in like the larger groups. So that helped a lot, and that was something that I brought to my direct manager's attention, that it may help for them to see a lot more change with us as employees. So just a little bit of background to kind of understand where this change came from. Ports America, we're a terminal operating company. So, that's going on its own. So we employ labor unions to load and discharge container vessels is my main job. I employ them and then I manage them throughout the operation. So to kind of get a better understanding of where this change is going to come from, we have to know, how does it do that? The structure of my union. So my ILA 1414, this is kind of just an overview and like a tree showing you all of the different labor that I have throughout operations. So to start is my main person, who we call our walking boss, and he's my direct contact for 1414. That's who I'll call if I have any issues, and he will call me if he has any issues. And he will relay the information to the rest of my labor. So under the walking boss, he's really in charge of everyone, but then his direct contacts are a two-man header, where they're in charge of my 6 shipside people. And what they do is they put twist locks, what we call twist locks, in the corners of containers, so that way when we put them on the vessel, they lock into each other, so that way the containers aren't moving and they're going to stay locked in. The next people we have are the driving header, and I have 7 drivers that will go from our container yard back to the vessel, or from the vessel to the container yard, and they will just do loops and loops and loops of bringing the containers to the vessel to be loaded, or from the vessel to the container yard to be discharged. And then where the change mostly developed around was our lashing header and our 6 lashers. So what they're in charge of is they actually lash the containers on the vessel with their lashing gear, so that way the containers aren't moving around and they're more stable on deck. And here you can see a picture in the corner of these rods that they're using to lash the container down. This just creates a more stability for the vessel and for these containers, so that way they aren't falling off and they're not going overboard and creating a lot of problems for the ships. So like I said, these lashers are using lashing bars to lock containers in place. Lashing is only used on deck of a vessel, so we'll load below deck of a vessel as well. And lashing is not needed below deck, so therefore I don't need lashers when I am working below deck. Now, what's tricky with this, and what caused a lot of issues with this change process as well, is that with unions, I'm sure you know, they're contract related, and they follow that contract very strictly, and it can kind of cause a lot of issues if we try to stray from that contract. Now, with lashers, we can do what we call knocking them off. So I won't use military time. At 6 p.m., I can knock these lashers off and not pay them for the rest of operations if I'm below deck. So if I'm working below deck, I can knock them off, and I get to save all of that money for my company. Now, before, we would just keep them, and they were getting paid to do nothing. They weren't doing any work, and I was just giving them free money, basically, is what was happening. Now, from a business standpoint, that's crazy. I want to save money. So for me, as if I was in charge, of course I want to knock these people off and save a lot more money for my company that I can do other things with. Now, this caused a lot of backlash just because this is the way it's been done for years. No other company has tried to do this. We're one of the first ones to try to do this here in Savannah, so for us, we kind of had to work out all the problems that it caused and all of the issues that arose with it that I'll get into a little bit later. But this was the main change that our management wanted to make, was let's stop paying these people if we're below deck to do nothing. So we moved all of our work around and changed all of our processes in-house, so that way our operations will end below deck, so I do not have to pay this group of people. So the change process is kind of where this project gets into, and when thinking about when management first implemented this change, there was no real change process. All they told us was, if you end operations below deck, stop paying these people and let them know that they don't need to be here and we're not going to pay them to be here. That was the only thing they told us. So really, only people in management knew the details of the entire change and all of the background side of things, contract-wise, that we were allowed to do and that we weren't allowed to do, which was really needed for us to know as well, because we're the ones that are actually going to be doing this change, and this process affects our job, not management. And management never really sat us down and explained the change and why this change was occurring until after the fact, after this change was already implemented and after we had been doing this for probably a month or so. So they really didn't create any buy-in from us, where I'd be working a vessel. Well, I can knock these lashers off, but what's the point? So that's kind of where they, I think, failed a little bit, and I didn't notice that at first, and I'm just noticing it throughout this class, that this is what was going on. So for them not explaining the details of the entire change on the contract side of things, it created a lot of issues that actually costed us a lot of money and actually hurt our production more than helped us what it was originally supposed to do. So issues that we faced after this change was we had a lot of backlash from the union. They want their money, they're doing the work. I don't blame them, but at the same time, I'm not going to pay them for not doing anything. So they kind of they said they would just go back to the contract, and they technically don't have to do any work on the vessel until a crane that is moving these containers is over the bay that we are working, which will cause our operations to slow down immensely. The union likes to stick together as well, so we started to see drivers start to slow down. We started seeing lashing get done later and later and later throughout operations, which caused us to end operations later and kind of delay our sailing time, which was costing us more money because we had to pay this labor longer. And then one thing that we saw more and more of is we were having to order emergency labor, which meant we had to order more people to come in and finish work, which cost us a lot more money because it's more expensive. I'm pretty sure that they're working at overtime rate at that point because we were knocking these lashers off and stopping paying them when we technically were not allowed to according to the contract. But us as employees didn't know that, and no one ever told us that and what the actual rules regarding the contract were. Only management knew, and they never relayed that information to us. So in reality, it was actually costing us a lot more money when management could have just dove into implementing change better. Because the change is a really good change for this company, and this process is great, but the way they implement it needed to be improved to ensure success for this company. So kind of what I was just going off of was one of the quotes I found when doing a lot of this research was, most carefully planned programs can fail because of mediocre implementation. So this planned program, well, not planned program, but planned action and change that they developed, there was a lot of thought put into the background, but it ultimately failed at the beginning because of the implementation process that they had, where there really wasn't any implementation. So when doing a lot of this research and background, and that I ultimately went to my direct manager and showed him some of the steps that they could be taking to ensure that, they aren't failing anymore, was I brought to their attention the Kotter's 8-step method, which some of them kind of knew the background of a lot of these theories and methods, but they never really thought to apply them. They're like, oh, that's just a theory, that's just a method. I'll never use that again in my life. But it really does help, because I'm starting to see it more and more when they're creating new processes. They're starting to take bits and pieces of these methods and models and actually implementing them into the workplace. So, like I said, I brought up Kotter's 8-step method with them and how they can create just this level of openness with us and explain to us why this change is occurring. What's it going to do for us? How is it going to make our jobs easier? How is it helping the company? And by explaining this to us, they're kind of creating leadership for themselves, where we're going to be more open to coming to them with questions, with problems, and they're creating this level of trust between us and management that, they're trusting us to do this, but they're also giving us all of the information along with it. The next theory I brought up was the Lewin's change theory, which is kind of just the basis model I feel like most companies can follow. Is, they see the change that they want. They put a lot of background thought into it. They sit everyone down saying, this is how we are currently doing it, but this is how we want to do it, and this is why. This is where we see the company going with this change. This is how it will help you, help us. And then they'll actually implement the change, and once the change is working properly in the way they want, it's ultimately freezed, meaning that's the new way to do it. So that's kind of where I see them more fitting into in this program, or this step of action. And the next thing I put down here that they could have done is be open and honest with us. Just tell us the whole story, explain all areas of the change. Just my big thing with change is creating buy-in from us. How does this affect me is the big thing. How is this going to make my job easier, or is it going to add to my plate and list of things to do? I want to know the entire story of something before we're going to do it, because if I mess up, it's ultimately on me. But if I don't know everything about it, I can't be held accountable either. So that's kind of one of the things that I brought to management's attention is, there needs to be more of an open line of communication. And then I think implementation will help better, or will work better. Here's a bunch of just the references I used, and there's actually a lot more, and I gave a list of these to my manager and was like, maybe you guys could read these and learn to implement change just a little bit better, so that way it's not ultimately costing us money, because that's what's happening with all the changes they've implemented so far, is at first it's costing us money until everyone gets on board and up to speed with what really should be happening, when they can just do a little bit more research and spend a little bit more time thinking about how to implement the change, and hopefully that will actually save them money rather than costing them up front. And that first link is just to the ILA contract, and it kind of outlines the gang structure and like my labor union structure, their pay rates, and so you can kind of guess how much or estimate how much we would be saving by, not paying these people for not doing any work, which is a lot of money. But that's ultimately what happened, and honestly, I'm really thankful for this class so far at my job, because it's teaching me a lot, and not just to agree with management, but to kind of question them and, bring to them some ideas of how they can improve and actually help us at the same time that we're helping them. So that's the end of this presentation. Thank you.